all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus Delendis 8. The Redpilled Man's Guide to Clean Living, written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. The Redpilled Man's Guide to Clean Living, a field guide for men who still notice reality. The probiotic parasite and the travel toothpaste delusion, exposing the hysterical toddler logic of effective imperialism, the mathematically proven fraud of the woke victim hierarchy, and why men built the boardroom and must reclaim the architectonics of civilization. I once watched a 3-year-old in a grocery store throw herself on the floor, scream until her face turned purple, and kick the linoleum because her mother refused to buy her a candy bar. The mother looked at me with exhausted, apologetic eyes. "She's just expressing herself," she whispered, as though I had wandered into a performance art piece rather than the cereal aisle. I smiled and nodded, because what else do you do? But I remember thinking, that child has discovered that noise is power, and she will never forget this lesson. Now imagine that same child 25 years later, with a gender studies degree, a Medium account, and a vocabulary for her tantrums that includes the phrase biopolitical control. Imagine her sitting in an air-conditioned office built by men who died in steel mills, typing on a machine engineered by men who never saw sunlight, connected to an electrical grid maintained by men who would be called away from their families at 3 in the morning during a winter storm. And imagine her declaring with every keystroke that she is the oppressed one, that her suffering is sacred, that the entire infrastructure of reality is a conspiracy against her feelings. You do not have to imagine her. She just wrote an article calling your existence an act of epistemic violence, and she is not asking for equality. She is demanding your surrender. Here is a statistic most commentators will never cite. 93% of workplace fatalities are men. 93%. Men die in mines, on oil rigs, on construction sites, and in the cabs of trucks at 4 in the morning, on highways that connect the very cities where these theories are hatched. They die by suicide at nearly 4 times the rate of women. They lose their children in family courts that treat fatherhood as a mere financial obligation rather than a sacred bond. They are arrested, restrained, and removed from their own homes based on unverified claims, because the Duluth model, a framework constructed by feminists in the 1980s, presumes male guilt as a structural axiom. The true gamma bias operates so silently, so pervasively, that pointing it out feels like heresy, because you have been conditioned since birth to view male suffering as background noise and female discomfort as an emergency siren. The same individuals who weep over a woman's hurt feelings in a boardroom meeting cannot name a single man who died building the very structure she is sitting in. This is not an accident. It is the architecture of a civilizational blindness. The article demands that you bow, confess, and yield. It tells you that your disagreement is proof of your guilt, a construction so perfectly circular that it would make a medieval inquisitor blush with envy. If I agree, I am guilty. If I disagree, my disagreement confirms my guilt. If I remain silent, my silence is complicity. This is not logic. This is the linguistic equivalent of a roach motel. You can check in, but you can never leave. The entire framework is designed to make your innocence impossible and your submission mandatory. And behind it all, behind the jargon and the moral posturing and the breathless declarations of revolution, is something ancient and pitiful, the spite of the incompetent toward the competent, dressed up in the language of justice, demanding not equality of opportunity but equality of outcome, because the former requires work and the latter only requires a sufficiently loud accusation. What follows is the surgical deconstruction of every lie in that article, word by word, premise by premise, syllogism by syllogism. We will trace the etymology of every corrupted term. We will drag every hidden premise into the light. We will demonstrate with the cold precision of formal logic that the ideology animating that piece does not want to reform civilization. It wants to consume it the way a parasite consumes a host. And it will call this process healing until there is nothing left alive to heal. By the time we are finished, you will understand exactly what that article is, where it comes from, why it targets you, and how to stand up, look it in the eye, and say the one word that tyrants and toddlers cannot endure. No bunkum article by a feminist PhD for centuries. The fragile male ego has draped itself in the velvet robes of reason and professionalism, masking its terrified toddler-like inability to handle female power. We are no longer tolerating this grotesque performance. The time for polite requests has expired. The era of uncompromising ideological seizure has begun. Consider the suffocating, insidious double bind forced upon women in the capitalist patriarchal workplace. When a man speaks loudly, monopolizes the oxygen in a boardroom, and pounds the table to mask his own mediocrity, he is heralded as a leader. He is assertive. He is driven. But the moment a woman, particularly a marginalized woman, exhibits even a fraction of that fiery, righteous indignation, she is branded as abrasive, hysterical, or unmanageable. This is not merely a double standard. It is a calculated mechanism of biopolitical control. It is what I have termed effective imperialism. Effective imperialism is the patriarchal colonization of emotional space. It is the violent theft of a woman's right to express her sacred, unmediated rage at a world built to exhaust her. Society demands that women shrink themselves into convenient, digestible portions, much like travel toothpaste, squeezed down to a minuscule, compliant size just to fit into the oppressive, male-designed luggage of corporate existence. We are expected to endure the agonizing compression of our souls, forced to bleed out quietly so we don't disturb the fragile peace of the men who profit from our silenced labor. And who, exactly, sets the baseline for what constitutes a reasonable reaction? The oppressor, naturally. The white cishet male power structure dictates that his numb sociopathic detachment is the objective baseline, while our screaming, visceral trauma is deemed an overreaction. When a man tells a woman she is overreacting, it is not an observation, it is an act of epistemic violence. It is a desperate attempt to invalidate the undeniable truth of her lived experience, because her reality threatens the fragile glass tower of his unearned privilege. These men sit comfortably upon the plush, unearned privilege of a seat cushion padded by centuries of subjugation, sneering at the marginalized who are forced to stand on the jagged edges of systemic violence. They demand civility from the people they are actively crushing under the boots of white supremacy and capitalist greed. How delightfully convenient for the executioner to demand that his victims stop screaming. Let us be unequivocally clear. There is no such thing as overreacting when you are standing on the front lines of an active genocide against marginalized identities. What old, dead, irrelevant philosophers called moral reasoning is nothing more than a patriarchal parlor game designed to protect the status quo. True moral reasoning does not look like a calm, detached debate over drinks. It looks like tearing down the walls of the institution. It looks like righteous, unapologetic fury. The entire male-dominated system is a rotting corpse of toxic bacteria, desperately clinging to life. It is not enough to simply wash over it with the gentle, useless promises of liberal reform. We do not need incremental change. We require a systemic flush. We need the ideological equivalent of heavy-duty probiotic capsules, a massive concentrated dose of radical feminism and cultural revolution designed to violently purge the colonial rot from the guts of our institutions, our laws and our schools. To the men reading this, your time is up. Your duty now is not to speak, not to debate, and certainly not to play devil's advocate. Your only acceptable mode of existence is absolute, unconditional difference. Your role is to yield space, to empty your pockets for reparations, to confess your inherent complicity in the rape of the world, and to bow your heads in perpetual penance for the sins of your chromosomes. If you feel attacked by this, good. Your discomfort is proof of your guilt. If you dare to dismiss this truth as mere hyperbole, you are only proving the depths of your bigotry and sealing your fate in the coming cultural renaissance. Smash the default, seize the discourse. The purge has begun. Get out of the way, or be crushed by the wheel of historical progress, the tyranny of the hysterical, deconstructing effective imperialism, and the war on logos. Friedrich Nietzsche once observed that whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. He failed to mention what happens when the monster paints its face with virtue and demands you call it justice. I hold in my hands a document breathed out, I assume, from the comfort of a heated apartment built by men, over a laptop networked by men, powered by a grid engineered by men, that declares my calm, measured existence an act of violence, not a rhetorical flourish, not a metaphor. Violence, the word means something. It comes from the Latin vis, meaning physical force, and latus, the past participle of ferre, to carry. Violence is carried force. It requires a fist, a blade, a bullet, a bruise. When this screed's writer calls her opponent's detachment an act of biopolitical warfare, she does to language what a dog does to a sofa cushion. She tears the stuffing out and expects you to admire the mess. Let us begin with grammar, as all honest thinking must. The article's fulcrum is the phrase fragile male ego, which the author drapes in velvet robes and masks as a terrified toddler-like inability to handle female power. A textbook projection, this the psychological term for taking what you cannot tolerate in yourself and nailing it to your neighbor's forehead like a Luther thesis. The etymology of hysteria traces directly to the Greek ostera, hystera, meaning womb. The Greeks, those architects of every institution the author enjoys while denouncing, observed a clinical phenomenon. Unregulated emotional storms emanating from the distinctly female inability to master one's own interior weather. They named the condition after the organ they believed responsible. You may dismiss ancient medicine as primitive, but watch what the author does next. She demands the right to express sacred, unmediated rage. She celebrates screaming, visceral trauma. She calls calm deliberation a parlor game. She does not refute the ancient diagnosis. She canonizes it. She makes of hysteria a sacrament. When a man tells a woman she is overreacting. It is not epistemic violence, a phrase that belongs in scare quotes, so large they could be seen from space. It is a factual observation about her relationship to emotional regulation, delivered with a faint hope that she might one day achieve it. The writer's complaint that women are squeezed like travel toothpaste into male-designed luggage is the most revealing metaphor she could have chosen, though not for the reasons she imagines. What is this luggage? It is the hard suitcase of objective reality, natural law, market discipline, cause and effect, the merciless arithmetic of profit and loss. The complaint is not oppression. The complaint is that the universe has edges. She demands that reality mold itself around her feelings, that the cosmos accommodate her moods, that the firmament rearrange itself so she never has to hear the word no. This is solipsism dressed as politics. The toothpaste tube is not being compressed by patriarchy. It is being compressed by the same constraints that press down on every mortal creature: gravity, time, scarcity, the irreducible fact that other people exist and have their own claims. The difference is that men, by and large, accept these constraints and build within them, while she sits in the ruins of a building she did not construct and complains that the roof leaks. Now consider the boardroom. The author insists that assertive men are called leaders while loud women are called abrasive, and she smells a conspiracy. Let us examine the etymology. Assertive comes from the Latin asserire, to claim, to lay hands upon one's own. A man who is assertive stakes a claim and carries the liability for it. He built the firm, signed the personal guarantees, took the loans, hired the workers, and will be the first one sued, fired, or ruined if the venture collapses. His assertiveness is tethered to risk like a horse to a post. When the author demands the same title of leader for a woman who merely speaks loudly in a meeting, she demands the crown without the cross. She wants the authority of the CEO without the liability of the janitor. This is not double standards. It is a single standard she refuses to meet. True leadership is inseparable from sacrifice. The man who pounds the table has mortgaged his house to be in that room. The woman who screams in that same room has been invited into it by policies that reward her chromosomes over her competence, and she repays the invitation by calling it oppression. The article's invocation of epistemic violence, the claim that disagreeing with a woman is tantamount to assaulting her reality, warrants its own autopsy. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy concerned with how we know what we know. The gold standard of knowledge has always been falsifiability. A claim is meaningful only if it can, in principle, be proven wrong. Lived experience. The article's evidentiary gold standard fails this test by design. It is unfalsifiable. If a woman says she feels oppressed, no evidence to the contrary is permitted. Her feeling is the fact. This is not epistemology. It is a theological claim masquerading as sociology, complete with infallible scripture and excommunication for heretics. To call the observation of this logical failure violence is to strip the word of every gram of its meaning. If my disbelief is violence, then words have no weight, and the entire apparatus of civilized discourse, the dialectic, the debate, the slow boring of hard boards that Weber identified as the essence of politics, collapses into a therapy session for the perpetually aggrieved. The article's pièce de résistance is the concept of effective imperialism, defined as the patriarchal colonization of emotional space. Let us parse this with the care it does not deserve. Imperialism denotes the conquest and subjugation of one territory by a foreign power. The territory here is a woman's right to express rage without consequence. The conquest is the ancient cross-cultural expectation that adults govern their emotions in shared spaces. She terms this biopolitical control. The rest of civilization calls it growing up. Every functional society on Earth requires the sublimation of base impulse into productive order. This is not patriarchal, it is anthropological. The alternative, uninhibited emotional expression, the privileging of visceral trauma over reasoned deliberation, has a name: barbarism. The syllogism writes itself: civilization requires the regulation of destructive impulses. She demands the uninhibited expression of rage. Therefore, she demands the destruction of civilization. QED, she does not realize she has made the strongest argument against her own position that anyone could compose. Then comes the assault on moral reasoning itself. The article dismisses calm, detached debate as a patriarchal parlor game and elevates righteous, unapologetic fury as the true compass of justice. I want the reader to hold this sentence in his mind and feel its weight. Aristotle identified logos, reasoned discourse, as the faculty that separates man from beast. The cardinal virtues, prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance, are exercised through the intellect, not the adrenal glands. By discarding reason in favor of rage, the writer does not advance a new ethics. She regresses to the ethics of the infant, for whom the only moral law is the urgency of its own scream. She confesses in print that she cannot argue, so she will scream. She cannot persuade, so she will intimidate. She cannot build, so she will tear down. This is not liberation, it is a tantrum with tenure. The writer asserts that there is no such thing as overreacting when one stands on the front lines of an active genocide against marginalized identities. She does not name the genocide, because there is no genocide, only a demographic that has discovered it can mint moral currency from permanent grievance. But let us take her at her word. If no reaction can be an overreaction, then every reaction is justified. A stolen glance becomes a hate crime. An awkward compliment becomes an act of colonial aggression. A forgotten anniversary becomes evidence of systemic patriarchal violence. By this logic, a woman's fury is always righteous, which means it is never subject to review, restraint, or correction. This strips women of moral agency entirely. It renders them unfit for positions of authority, because authority without accountability is tyranny. The essayist, in her haste to exempt herself from criticism, has accidentally made the most devastating case against female leadership ever committed to pixels. She argues that women are emotionally uncontrollable, logically unaccountable, and morally unimpeachable, all in the same breath. If I had set out to write a parody of feminism, I could not have improved upon her work. We now arrive at the seat cushion that plush unearned privilege claimed to be what men sit upon, padded by centuries of subjugation. I want to tell you what that seat cushion is actually made of. It is made of the 4,764 workplace deaths that occur every year in the United States alone, over 90% of them men. It is made of the 12 million men who died in the mud of the Western Front, the 20 million Soviet soldiers who fell stopping fascism, the 300,000 Union dead who ended slavery. It is made of the men who mined the coal, forged the steel, laid the rail, poured the concrete, dug the sewers, strung the wire, and buried their friends in the process. It is made of the 3.88 times higher suicide rate that men endure in silence, because the culture tells them their pain is not legible. It is made of the family courts that strip fathers of their children in 82% of custody cases, of the divorce courts that seize the product of a man's labor and hand it to the woman who swore before God and witnesses to stay. It is made of the 63% sentencing discount women receive for identical crimes, the battered woman syndrome defense, the PMS defense, the I felt like it defense. The seat cushion is not unearned. It was paid for in blood, sweat, and silence, and this writer sits on it without the decency to learn the names of the men who stuffed it. The article closes with a command: smash the default, seize the discourse. The purge has begun. Get out of the way or be crushed. There it is, the mask removed at last. Not dialogue, not dialectic, not the slow mutual pursuit of truth that the Western tradition elevated from the agora to the laboratory. A purge. A purge is what Pol Pot conducted. A purge is what Stalin organized at 3 a.m. A purge is what happens when ideology replaces reality and the firing squad replaces the argument. The writer does not want justice, she wants submission. She wants you to yield space, empty your pockets, confess your inherent complicity, and bow your head in perpetual penance, not for anything you have done, but for what you are. This is the grammar of totalitarianism: guilt without act, confession without crime, punishment without end. And she calls it progress. I will end with a distinction. Hate is sustained, threat-focused motivation toward a specific target. Read the article again. It calls for purges, for crushing, for the violent seizure of discourse. It demonizes an entire sex. It demands collective guilt and collective punishment. By any honest definition, it is hate. Not righteous anger, not legitimate grievance. Hate, cold, systematic ideological hate, dressed in the language of liberation and consecrated by the false priesthood of critical theory. The boy who saw that the emperor wore no clothes spoke a sentence that shattered an illusion. The illusion we face is larger and more dangerous. That rage is reason, that feeling is fact, that the destruction of civilization is justice. The antidote is what it has always been: truth spoken plainly, definitions held firm, logic applied without apology, and the unshakable conviction that the good, the true, and the beautiful did not survive 25 centuries of assault, only to be cancelled by a blog post. Then comes the terminal semantic inflation, the word that proves the writer has severed all contact with material reality. The article declares that marginalized identities face an active genocide. I will dissect this accusation with the scalpel it deserves. The inflationary chain is mechanistic and deliberate. Discomfort inflated to harm, harm inflated to violence, violence inflated to erasure, and erasure inflated to the most morally loaded word in the human vocabulary. The terminology must expand because the material reality cannot justify the grievance. So the grievance must hijack the language of ultimate suffering to extract maximum submission. The probiotic parasite, female solipsism, resentment, and the suicide of the West. Genocide. She types the word from a climate control department, fed by agricultural systems men invented, protected by police forces men's staff, connected to a power grid men engineered. Inside a political order men drafted, and she calls her existence a genocide. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that men account for 92.1% of fatal work injuries annually. The CDC records that men complete suicide at nearly 4 times the rate of women. The Department of Justice confirms men are the victims of violent crime at significantly higher rates. American men drafted the 13th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act. They bled at Gettysburg, Normandy, and Iwo Jima to secure the liberties that allow her to publish the word genocide without a knock on her door. If this is a genocide against marginalized identities, it is the first genocide in recorded history where the supposedly exterminated party controls the universities, the HR departments, the family courts, the school systems, the therapeutic professions, the social services bureaucracy, the mainstream media editorial boards, the nonprofit sector, the diversity consultancy racket, and the entire emotional infrastructure of the Western mind. The writer demands men yield space, empty pockets, confess inherent complicity, bow heads in perpetual penance, and above all, shut up. This is not a political program, it is a liturgy. She is describing an auto da fe, the public penance of heretics. Before the Inquisition, except the new church, has no theology, no scripture, no priesthood, no sacraments, and no God. Its only dogma is that you are guilty, its only sacrament is your confession, its only absolution is your silence, and its only heaven is your disappearance. The Inquisition at least permitted the accused to recant. This ideology offers no such mercy because the crime is existence itself. Your discomfort as proof of your guilt is the statement of a torturer, not a philosopher. And any system that declares the defendant's denial to be further evidence of guilt has abandoned the most elementary principles of justice that Western civilization spent 2 millennia establishing. The writer compares her revolution to heavy-duty probiotic capsules designed to violently purge the colonial rot from institutions. Consider what a probiotic actually is. A foreign organism introduced into a host body to colonize, compete with, and suppress the native flora. She has accidentally told the exact truth. Feminism does not build, create, construct, or establish. It invades, colonizes, consumes, and purges the host. A probiotic does not build a new body. It takes over an existing one. The metaphor reveals the parasitic logic at the foundation of her entire ideology. There is no feminist civilization, no feminist infrastructure, no feminist power grid or agricultural system or defensive wall. There is only the existing civilization that men built, which she wishes to colonize and redirect toward her own purposes while denouncing the very men whose labor makes her survival possible. Consider the demographic reality beneath this rhetoric. The total fertility rate in every nation that has adopted this ideology has collapsed below replacement level. The European Union sits at 1.46 births per woman. Canada has fallen to 1.33. South Korea, which has adopted the writers' program more enthusiastically than almost any other nation, has plummeted to 0.72, a number that means the population halves every generation. The coming cultural renaissance is a demographic funeral march. The ideology sterilizes the women who adopt it, and in doing so deletes their genetic lineage from the future. Evolution is conducting the ultimate vote, and the feminists are losing. The cry to smash the default is a confession of inadequacy. If women could outcompete men in building, engineering, defending, and maintaining civilization, they would simply do it. No smashing would be necessary. The marketplace of competence does not care about feelings. It cares about results. The bridge either stands or falls. The power grid either delivers electricity or it does not. The enemy either retreats or advances. When you cannot win by the existing rules, you do not become better. You demand the rules be destroyed. This is resentment, the seething, corrosive hatred of the weak for the strong, not because the strong have wronged them, but because the strong exist and the weak cannot match them. The writer argues men suffer from a toddler-like inability to handle female power. Let us examine this projection. A toddler screams when denied. A toddler throws objects when frustrated. A toddler blames others for consequences it created. A toddler demands the world reshape itself to accommodate its wishes. A toddler has no concept of reciprocity, no capacity for self-examination, and no ability to distinguish between its feelings and objective reality. Now read her essay again, screaming about genocide that does not exist, demanding unconditional surrender without negotiation, blaming all misfortune on a single scapegoated group, insisting that feelings constitute evidence, and requiring the entire structure of civilization be dismantled because it does not make her feel validated. This projection is undeniable. She has described herself with pinpoint accuracy and attributed the diagnosis to her enemy. Men are the sole net lifetime contributors to the tax base in every Western nation. Women consume more in government services than they pay in taxes across every cohort studied. Men built the roads, the bridges, the power plants, the communication networks, the hospitals, the universities, the legal systems, the constitutional frameworks, and the military establishments that make her critique possible. She writes on a device men invented, powered by electricity men generated, transmitted over networks men engineered, inside a building men constructed, protected by laws men drafted, in a language men codified, and her only contribution is the demand that men apologize for it. The path forward is not surrender. It is not negotiation with those who demand your extinction. It is reconstruction. Men must unapologetically reclaim the architectural authority that is rightfully theirs, strip institutions of the feminine parasitism that has rendered them hostile to competence and truth, and build new fortresses of masculine capability where reason governs, merit determines rank, evidence settles disputes, and the transcendentals, the true, the good, the beautiful stand as the immovable pillars of civilization. We did not build this world by apologizing for existing. We will not save it by starting now. You want to know what real epistemic violence looks like? It's a father standing in a family courtroom, watching a judge hand his children and his house to a woman who committed adultery, fabricated abuse claims, and spent the last decade of marriage spending his earnings on wine and yoga workshops, all because the system presumes her innocence and presumes his guilt. It's the 78% of suicide victims who are men, told their entire lives to open up and then mocked when they do. It's the man arrested for a social media comment while his female accuser walks free. It's the cuckolded husband raising a child he didn't sire. With a non-paternity rate hovering between 1% and 3%, hundreds of thousands of men unknowingly pouring their bloodline into the dirt so a woman could enjoy her secret little rebellion against obligation itself. That is the real structural violence, and it is not metaphorical, not theoretical, and not up for debate. The feminist article you just suffered through is a confession dressed as an indictment. It accidentally proved everything we have been saying. Its writer demanded the right to be unhinged, called it righteous fury, branded all dissent as violence, and then, with the staggering self-awareness of a toddler, accused men of being the toddlers. This is not argumentation. It is the thrashing of a creature trapped in its own contradictions, blaming the walls for existing. When you strip away the academic jargon, biopolitical control, epistemic violence, effective imperialism, you find a simple truth. The writer is furious that reality has rules, and that those rules do not bend for her tantrums. Every civilization in history recognized this danger. The ancients didn't suppress female emotion out of cruelty. They channeled it because they understood that a society which validates hysteria as virtue will consume itself within a single generation. And so here you stand, having read the evidence, having watched the syllogisms collapse the entire feminist framework into dust. You now possess something the article's author will never have, the liberating knowledge that the seat cushion she mocks was forged by men, the institutions she wants to flush were built by men, and the language she weaponizes was handed to her by the very civilization she is trying to dismantle. You are not guilty, you owe no apology. You are the heir to logos, to the transcendentals of the good, the true, and the beautiful, and you have every right to reclaim the house that your forefathers built. So go forth, speak the truth with the boldness of the boy who named the emperor's nakedness, and never again shrink yourself into travel toothpaste to make room for someone else's psychosis. And now the sponsored book introduction, The Red-Pilled Man's Guide to Clean Living. Men weren't meant to live like this. I learned it the hard way. 10 years ago, my apartment looked like a daycare center hit by a tornado, dirty dishes fossilizing on countertops, laundry avalanches burying my dignity, and a Volksfest that screamed unemployed philosopher. My dating life, a parade of eye rolls from women who could smell the beta stench through my Axe body spray. My career, stalled faster than a Prius in a mud pit. Then I discovered what every alpha from Genghis Khan to Jeff Bezos already knew: dominion over dust isn't about cleaning, it's war. This book is your boot camp. I'm not here to coddle you with feminist fairy tales about shared responsibilities or guilt trip you with woke sermons on toxic masculinity. Real men don't negotiate with dust bunnies, they annihilate them. Through trial, error, and studying everything from Marine Corps field manuals to the asset sheets of divorced CEOs, I cracked the code. Turns out, scrubbing your toilet can boost testosterone more than deadlifting if you do it like a Spartan, not a simp. Your clutter isn't just mess. It's a blinking neon sign telling rivals to steal your promotions and women to swipe left. This book is for red-pilled men who'd rather swallow barbed wire than another Soylat lecture on emotional labor. If you still think gender roles are negotiable or that your wife's boyfriend is just a friend, close this book now. Go binge Netflix with your CBD gummies. But if you want to weaponize your space into a divorce-proof promotion magnet fortress using tactics ripped from Navy SEALs, Fortune 500 titans, and the playbooks of dead empires, keep reading. You'll learn why Elon Musk's rocket engineers ban paper clips, how medieval knights polished armor to avoid literal decapitation, and why your gym's filthy floor is sabotaging your gains. Weak men see cleaning as punishment. Alphas know its power. Your ancestors didn't conquer continents by embracing vulnerability. They sharpened spears, fortified camps, and left chaos for the corpses. Your mess isn't a personality quirk, it's surrender. This book will teach you to hack evolutionary biology so women instinctively respect your domain. Dodge the marriage plantation's asset stripping traps and build a legacy that outlives you. The woke mob wants you demoralized, disorganized, and dependent. Time to fight back, one spotless surface at a time. The Red-Pilled Man's Guide to Clean Living, written by Conrad Reicha. Buy now. Links in description.